This is an overview episode, and we're thinking, what are the things that you need to do to help all four of these skills? Working on your technique is of paramount importance. It will define the limit of what you can accomplish on any four of these. Hello and welcome to the Musician Toolkit, episode number 84. My name is David Lane, and it is great to be with you once again. Okay, it is time for what will be a first-time experience for me as a podcaster. I have done at least a couple of times between this podcast and my other podcast, Life in the Pit. I have done a few episodes that were related to each other, a two-part series. So, I think the only time we've done that on the Musician Toolkit was when I had an extra long interview with Eric Schwartz talking about heavy metal. That was a little over a year ago. But this is the first time that I'm starting a genuine series of episodes. This is the first of a 5-part series. And the series is called The 4 Core Performance Skills. So today's episode is going to be where I list and give you an overview of the 4 skills. And then the next 4 episodes that I do will each focus on one of those skills and give you some actionable suggestions of how you can work on each one to get them better. So today I'm just going to talk about the skills and just kind of a little overview of what they are, why they're useful, and what kind of sub-skills are needed for this to go well. Now, I said this is a 5-episode series. It may or may not be 5 episodes in a row. I have a pretty detailed schedule of how I want my solo episodes to go, but I don't always know when I'll be recording guests, which guests I'll be recording, and how the calendar looks for getting them on. So it may not be 5 episodes in a row, but it will be the next 5 solo episodes. So let's go ahead and get to this first part today, and let's talk about the 4 core performance skills. So these are the core skills that no matter what instrument you play, if you know these 4 skills and you master them to the best of your ability, you're going to be able to perform well in any situation. Now, I know a lot of good musicians who are excellent at 1 or 2 of these, and maybe even 3 of these. But the ones who can do all 4, they're at the top of my list when I'm a music director and I'm trying to find musicians that I want to work with. And, you can be really good at all 4 of these skills while not necessarily being the best in even your area at any one of them. But if you can do all 4, or even if you can do really well in 3 of 4, and just be working on that 4th, you're on your way to being a well-rounded musician. So here are the 4 skills, and I'll say just a little bit more about them. By the way, on all these episodes, I did mean to say I don't know that either of these episodes will be particularly long. I just want to have some focus on what we're talking about this, because I think this is an important enough topic that we really get into it and really have time to just talk about these skills. So here are the 4 core performance skills: sight reading, playing by ear, transposing, and improvising. Or if you prefer the more formal noun equivalents of those last 2, transposition and improvisation. So once again, that is sight reading, playing by ear, transposing or transposition, and improvisation. Now, if you heard episode 78, where I talked with Paul Barron about his work as a session player playing trumpet for bands like David Lee Roth and Aerosmith, he talked about what he could expect in a session. And he, without knowing that I was going to talk about this, he just, in 3 consecutive examples, laid out 3 of the 4 skills. He talked about sometimes you show up to record, you haven't practiced in advance, and they have a written out chart for you to play. You just have to play the music that's written there. That's sight reading. And then he said sometimes someone in the band or one of the producers will go to a piano or pick up a guitar, and they'll play this idea that they would like for the trumpet or the trumpet section to record. And so they play it, and then as a trumpet player, you're supposed to just play it back. You just kind of repeat what you just heard. That's playing by ear. And then he said sometimes they work with a band or an artist, and they know that they want trumpets, but they don't really have any ideas at this point. But the trumpets, the players are there, and they got to record, got to do something. So they just ask them to throw out some ideas. And, they might get some prompts like, here's the chords, here's an overall mood, here's a tempo. But freely on the spot, they have to create the music, and that is improvisation. And he didn't mention it as an example, but it's very easy to imagine a situation where an artist or band, while the recording, might say, I've thought about it. I think I would really like to sing this or put everything down a step or up a step. Could you guys follow suit? Well, that's transposing. Now, there's a lot of other things that we can talk about as far as skills. If you're thinking right away, well, those aren't the only 4 skills you have to have. There's music theory, there's technique. So hold on a moment. Let's go ahead and talk about sub-skills. Music theory. If you followed the podcast before, you know that that's a passion of mine. Well, music theory will help you with your sight reading. Music theory will help you play by ear. It will help you with transposing, and it'll most certainly help you with improvisation. Now, there's different ways of approaching theory to get the best use out of them, but you absolutely, if you want to do well at any of these 4 core skills, improving your knowledge and your fluency with music theory will help you in all 4 of those skills. Technique. Well, technique is how you play your instrument. And the things that you know really well that you see all the time, such as all the types of scales you can learn, your chords, your chord progressions, your arpeggios. Well, all of those are things that can help you sight read music sooner rather than later. Playing by ear. Now, obviously, this is where ear training comes in to play. Ear training actually can help your sight reading too, and I think we'll talk about that when we focus on sight reading. It's something you may not think right away, but yeah, it can. It obviously helps you play by ear. It obviously helps you with transposition, and it obviously helps you with improvisation. But technique and the ability to play it, that is something that you can plug in to sight reading. It also is something you can figure out quickly when you're playing by ear. It is really valuable when it comes to transposition because guess what? You learn your technique in all of the keys. Doing well in transposition is all about thinking in terms of function rather than actual notes. So this is a way that you can approach your technique practice. It will help you as far as that goes. And of course, improvisation, knowing the building blocks within any key and being able to change keys. And your technique will go so far in determining what you can do when you're improvising. Music history. Well, look, knowing names and dates and places and pieces is not going to help you as a performer. But knowing things about the Baroque era, things about, what you could expect with 2-part texture, what you could expect with ornamentation, what you can expect with form and structure in various eras, and certain types of accompaniment patterns. Things such as Alberti bass in the classical era and wide arpeggios in the, especially in the left hand of a piano part in the Romantic era. These are things that you can plug in pretty quickly. So if this is an overview episode and we're thinking, what are the things that you need to do to help all 4 of these skills, working on your technique is of paramount importance. It will define the limit of what you can accomplish on any 4 of these. If you can't play an F-sharp major scale well, you've eliminated that from all 4 things of doing that well in those situations. Like you're not going to sight read a piece well that requires you to play an F-sharp major scale. At least you're not going to do it very fast. You could hear an F-sharp major scale being played on whatever your source is that you're trying to play by ear. If you can't play it yourself, it's not going to help you. And, if you're playing something in the key of F major and someone says, I'd really like to transpose this up a half step, you're going to be limited. And likewise, you've removed that key from being a good key to having improvisation. And that's just one example. You might have many holes that you need to work on. So practicing your technique should be your number one priority as a performing musician before you can really benefit on any of these core skills. Music theory, while I think it's super important, that is something that you should be working on over time. You do not have to have great fluency in musical theory to dive into these core skills, but as you improve that, so will your core skills. I'd refer you back to episode number 31, the Music Theory Checklist, and I'll put that in the show notes so that you can find it easily. And just go through that and see where you are, where you need to improve, and start working on that, because that will help you. So let's just start with that. Music history, I still want you to work on it, but I'll go ahead and tell you it's just not as important for the sake of these 4 skills. So let me just describe some scenarios. I've done a lot of work for musical theater. Most of what you're expected to do, in fact, I talked, that was the whole point of Life in the Pit. I talked to a lot of musicians, and the core skill that came out as the one that you just can't ignore, you can't let this be the one that's a weakness, and that is sight reading. And that's why I listed first. There's going to be other genres and other situations where sight reading just isn't that important. But I'm thinking, like, if you're a session musician, if you play in an ensemble of any kind, you are expected to not have any problem sight reading. So this is a really important skill to get right. We've had a couple of episodes on sight reading. I would encourage you to seek those out. The most recent one was with David Holter. But most of what the situations you're going to encounter in that environment is something thoroughly composed, and you just need to play what you see. You need to play it well. Playing by ear can come up sometimes as well. Like there may be something that was on the cast recording, but it didn't get copied that way when it comes to the scores that have been rented. And the director or music director, they may have a strong opinion. I really want it this way. And maybe there hasn't been time, or there hasn't been someone with the skills to transcribe those. So you listen to it and you figure it out. You know, if you're a music teacher, you might be teaching sight reading, but you may have a student request, as I had one request just this past week, for me to listen to a song, learn to play it, and then teach them how to play it. This was an adult student. That was their exact request. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'll be listening to it, and I'll be playing it by ear. Now, maybe I could find a transcription, but it might not be accurate. If I want to play something accurately, I need to do this by ear. This was one of the things when I was in high school and I was dabbling with guitar. You know, I would hear people, I'd have friends, you know, that were doing the same thing, and they would just swear by the almighty tablature transcription in the Guitar Magazine at the time. And I'm like, that is not the authentic way to learn how to play a rock tune. The way to learn how to play a rock tune is you listen to it and you figure it out. Now, I would advise you to get a teacher to make sure that your technique is sharp, but this is something that can come up quite a bit. Sometimes playing by ear is playing something that you know how it goes in your head. You can't go listen to it. Like someone might ask me if I could play, here's a good example, the Moonlight Sonata. Well, I've played the Moonlight Sonata. I've read it with the sheet music many times. I've never played it enough to memorize it. But sometimes someone will ask me to play it, and what I actually do is I'm going into playing by ear mode, and I know how it goes, and I'm playing what I hear. It's a very fun thing to be able to take any current movie or anything popular in movie or television theme and just sit down and be able to play a recognizable version of that on your instrument. So now transposing comes up every now and then, and the situation is not as frequent. But if you are working, especially like with a vocalist, someone who is very indifferent on what the music looks like, but very picky on how it feels in their voice, how it feels as their instrument. If you're collaborating with them, you're going to quite often get a request, can we try that up a step, up 2 steps, down a half step, down a whole step? I've actually played off of a chart before and had some people say, wouldn't it be nice if this last time, if we modulated that last verse up a whole step? You want to know how to do that without having to see it written down. This is transposing. And then improvisation is a skill that has kind of its own world and its own uses. So improvisation, if you are a jazz, rock, pop musician, if you're playing in something that's not classical, it's highly valued when it comes to adding solos, when it comes to embellishing your accompaniment. But improvisation, if you are a composer of any kind, it gives you kind of access to this creative muscle to see what kind of music it is that you want to create, what kind of things you tend to do naturally. So it is a starting point of composition. But we had a guest one time, Jeff Wesley, whose entire career at the moment is based off of improvisation. Like, he only plays his own music, and it's only things that he has already improvised. And sometimes, like in musical theater, they'll ask you, play a piano solo, play a saxophone solo, play a flute solo. I have good musician friends, and this is their weakness. They can do the other three just fine, but this is the one that they don't do so well. So when I rank these by importance, I'm going to say for most of you, sight reading and playing by ear are the two that you should focus on right away. Transposing is actually, and maybe possibly, the one that you can learn quicker than the others. That doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. There's definitely some work involved, which is why not everyone does these four skills very well. And improvisation is the one that you can probably take your time with. And actually, let me rephrase that. It's not the one that you have to get a lot of good work as a musician, but it's the one that will be the X factor in who you are as a musician. Because when you can improvise, that means that you can deconstruct how music works when it works well and reassemble it yourself. And you're not doing so with a pencil and an eraser where you can write something, try it, erase it, try something else. Again, I'm a composer, so I like that art. It's a little different than when you're just on the spur of the moment coming up with something. This is exercising a part of your brain, a part of your musical brain that your other skills really aren't hitting as well. And also, I think, and I've heard other musicians say this as well, the ability to improvise represents the purest expression of musicianship in a way that nothing else does. Look, we can talk about how valuable sight reading is, especially in the last 400 or 500 years, but let's just face it, for most of musical history, music wasn't written down. So it was the other ways that you learn these things. Now, you may not have had an instrument that you could transpose, but playing by ear and improvising, this is culturally, historically, the way you make music. And by the way, some feed the other. The better you can play by ear, the better you can memorize, and the better you can improvise. So again, when we go forward, the next episode, we're going to take again, these won't be very long episodes, not super deep dive, but we're going to focus on sight reading the next episode, at least the next solo episode. And then after that, we'll focus on playing by ear, and then we'll focus on transposing, then we'll focus on improvisation. So again, these are the 4 core performance skills. It's what everything is built off of in every situation. I can't think of a single situation where you would play where you're not using one or more of those skills. So for today, just give yourself a grade on where you are. And maybe I should say it this way, not compared to the most difficult level of music there is. So if you're a pianist, I'm not saying that you could sight read Charles Alkan or Busoni, or that you could play any of his music by ear or anything like that. I want to say, relative to the pieces that you are working on, give yourself a 1 to 10 on each of these. So just kind of relative to the music that you're practicing, how is your sight reading? 1 being it is bad. I really don't do well at all. I need a lot of work. Or 10, it is a strength. I'm not sure how I could improve it. So give yourself a rating of 1 to 10. Sight reading, playing by ear, transposing, and improvising. So I'm really excited to do deeper exploration on all of these, and of course the next solo episode, which may or may not be the next episode, we'll get into these skills starting with sight reading. So that's going to wrap up today's episode. If you got any value out of today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you would share it to your social media feed or in an email or in a text to someone who can get some benefit out of it, or someone you think can get benefit out of it. Feel free to reach out by sending me a message on Instagram at David Lane Music or on Facebook at David M. Lane Music, where you can follow me there. If you're on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe and to give this video a thumbs up. You can also reach out through my website at davidlanemusic.com, where you can also find more things, including all the episodes of the podcast. So that's going to wrap up today's episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back with you again next week.